Jeremiah chapter 22 verses 13 to 30. In the first part of this chapter, we saw the judgment pronounced against Shalom. Verses 13 to 30 tells us about the prophecies of judgment given to Jehoiakim and Coniah when they were the kings of Judah. Jeremiah reminds the reigning king Zedekiah to be warned against injustice and oppression by seeing the sad fate of his predecessors and turn unto the Lord. The message to Jehoiakim, verses 13 to 17. These verses tells us about the sins of Jehoiakim, who failed as a king to do justice to his people. Verse 13. Woe unto him that buildeth his house by unrighteousness, and his chambers by wrong, that useth his neighbour's service without wages, and giveth him naught for his work. The people were heavily taxed because Jehoiakim had to pay a heavy tribute to Pharaoh Necho. In this time, when people were crushed with taxation, ambitious and proud Jehoiakim built a magnificent house for himself and also renovated his palace. There is nothing wrong for a king to build houses and palaces, but below are the sins he committed. 1. Hebrews 13:5 says, Be content with such things as ye have. But Jehoiakim failed to be content on the palace of the kings of Judah which he lived upon. 2. Proverbs 10:2 says, Treasures of wickedness profit nothing, but Jehoiakim did the construction work with ill-gotten money. 3. He lived in splendor in the midst of the people's misery. 4. As a king, he failed to care for his people. He cared only for his family and himself. He wanted to establish his state and dignity. 5. He renovated his palace during the Babylonian crisis. This reflects his misplaced priorities, attending to personal comfort rather than fulfilling his royal duty to care for the cause of the poor and needy in this time of need. 6. He embarked on the lavish palace building scheme, forcing his subjects to work for nothing. This is in violation to the law which required payment of wages that night itself. Leviticus 19:13, Deuteronomy 24:15. James 5:4 says that the cries of such people enters into the ears of the Lord of Sabaoth, the Lord of hosts. The prophet reproves the ambition and pride of King Jehoiakim. Woe to such a person, since God will repay injustice and greatly punish him. Having completed the construction, verse 14 tells about the minute planning he did for his magnificent house. This extravagant display of splendor shows his pride and was a proof of his luxury. 1. Jehoiakim built large summer chambers with good ventilation to let in light and air. 2. He constructed windows of unusual width and decorated the windows with ornamental cuts. History says that his windows were fitted with lattice work and shielded by curtains. 3. He sealed his house with cedar. That is, he lined the house throughout with cedar, the most expensive and durable wood. Isaiah 9:10. 4. He painted the house with vermilion. It is a red pigment still attracting special attention in the buildings of Egypt. Ezekiel 23:14. The king was probably impelled by the vain-glorious desire to imitate the magnificence of the Egyptian king Pharaoh Necho, who had placed him on the throne. In verse 15, there is a contrast between the life of Josiah and that of Jehoiakim. Jehoiakim was always taking measures to secure a long continuance of power. He failed to realize that the measure of a king's greatness is not really the beauty and cost of his palace, but his righteousness and justice. Jeremiah confronted Jehoiakim for his greed and injustice. On the other hand, Jehoiakim's father Josiah had been a great king, and God had blessed him and established his throne because he practiced the true kingly work of judgment and justice. That is why he lived cheerfully and comfortably, enjoying peace, success, and prosperity. Ecclesiastes 2:24. Verse 16. He judged the cause of the poor and needy. Then it was well with him. Was not this to know me? saith the Lord. Then it was well with him. This is repeated in verse 15 and 16 not only to show the certainty of it, but that it might be observed and Josiah's example followed. The prophet proclaims that the religious fame of Josiah rested not on his restoration of the temple worship nor on his suppression of idolatry, but much more on his faithfulness in his kingly work to the cause of righteousness and mercy. Was not this to know me? Saith the Lord. Only a person who truly knows and acknowledges God can do their duties of justice and charity. The reason Josiah judged fairly was because of his intimate relationship with God. Verse 17. But thine eyes and thine heart are not but for thy covetousness. 1 Timothy 6:10 says, For the love of money is the root of all evil, which, while some coveted after, they have erred from the faith and pierced themselves through with many sorrows. Jehoiakim's heart was covetous and was meditating and forming schemes to gratify that lust. His eyes were looking out here and there for proper objects and opportunities to exercise it. He resorted to shedding innocent blood, oppression, and violence to get what he wanted. For this cause, Prophet Ezekiel in Ezekiel 19:6 compares Jehoiakim to a young lion which learned to catch the prey and devoured men. Jehoiakim was indeed ripe for judgment. The judgment to come upon Jehoiakim, verses 18-19. Jehoiakim was a very bad son of a very good father. He was only 25 years old when he began to reign and only 36 years old when he died. 2 Kings 23:36. Thus, we can picture him as a thoroughly spoiled and self-indulgent young ruler. Since Jehoiakim rebelled against Nebuchadrezzar, king of Babylon, 2 Kings 24:1-2, during Nebuchadrezzar's second siege of Jerusalem, Jehoiakim was carried by him to Babylon in fetters. 2 Chronicles 36:6. He died in disgrace in Babylon. Verse 18. Therefore, thus saith the Lord concerning Jehoiakim, the son of Josiah, king of Judah, they shall not lament for him, saying, Ah, my brother, or Ah, sister. They shall not lament for him, saying, Ah, Lord, or Ah, his glory. Jehoiakim had lost his people's affection when he lived, so there would be none found to bewail and lament at his death. Usually, mourning in the East was loud and vehement with a variety of impassioned sentences, each ending with a burden like, Ah, my brother, Ah, my sister. The Hebrew word hoi, usually translated ah, occurs 4 times in this verse, stressing the serious judgment that would befall this king. It is not likely that those of them that were in Babylon made a great lamentation for him. There will be no real grief or inward sorrow on account of his death to outwardly express with the below words. 1. Ah, my brother. This refers to the personal affection given to a man. 1 Kings 13:30. 2. Ah, sister. It refers to the title of affection given to a beloved. 3. Ah, Lord. It expresses public lamentation given to him. 4. Ah, his glory. It means, alas, his majesty. Contrast this with Josiah's lamentation in 2 Chronicles 33:25. And Jeremiah lamented for Josiah, and all the singing men and the singing women spake of Josiah in their lamentation to this day, and made them an ordinance in Israel. And behold, they are written in the Lamentations. Notice the beauty of Jeremiah's style in his prophecy against Jehoiakim. 1. In verse 13-14, he describes Jehoiakim in general terms without using his name. 2. In verse 15-17, he directly addresses Jehoiakim without naming him. 3. And in verse 18, he names Jehoiakim but in third person to imply that God puts him in a distance from him. The boldness of Jeremiah in reproving the Judahite kings who held the throne by divine authority proves his divine mission. Verse 19. He shall be buried with the burial of an ass, drawn and cast forth beyond the gates of Jerusalem. The prophet amplifies the disgrace by which King Jehoiakim would be treated at his death. He shall be buried with the burial of an ass. That is, he shall not be buried at all, or he shall be buried in an indecent and contemptible manner. As the carcass of ass is dragged by dogs, his body will be dragged and cast forth beyond the gates of Jerusalem, lest his stink, that is, the strong foul smell coming from his body, should infect the city. No dignified burial. It will be unworthy not only of a grave but also of being seen by men. Of its fulfillment we know nothing, but the following mentions that it was fulfilled. 1. This prophecy is repeated in Jeremiah 36:30. Its reproduction shows that the prophet's words have not failed. 2. The prophet would not have inserted it in Zedekiah's role unless the circumstances of Jehoiakim's death had been such, so as to give full weight to this warning to Zedekiah. 3. The scripture mentions that he was carried into Babylon, 2 Kings 24:15, and died there, thus fulfilling this prophecy. His death shows the vanity of this prince in building great and stately buildings, which neither did he enjoy nor did they give him honor at his death. He acted like an animal, so he would die like an animal. A prophecy against Jerusalem and her rulers, verses 20 to 23. Verse 20. Go up to Lebanon and cry, and lift up thy voices in Bashan, and cry from the passages, for all thy lovers are destroyed. The prophet begins this part of his discourse with a sarcasm at their carnal security and confidence on creatures. By crying and calling for help from them, Jeremiah asks if they could be saved from the Chaldeans who are coming against them. The Lebanon mountains were to Judah's north. Bashan was to the northeast beyond the Jordan, Numbers 27:12. The passages were the passes between the rocks of the mountains, 1 Samuel 14:4. These great mountain ranges, Lebanon and Bashan, running from the north to south, overlooked the route of the Babylonians, and this invoked the prophet to mention it. In Hebrew language, Jerusalem is personified as a mourning female. Jeremiah asks her to go up to the highest points visible from Jerusalem and cry aloud for help to the neighboring allies and lament there for the calamity of herself and for the loss of her lovers, that is, her political allies and pagan gods who are one after the other being cast down. Ezekiel points out the Egyptians and Assyrians with whom she made alliances as her lovers. Ezekiel 23:5-9. Her ally, especially Egypt, was now unable to help the Jews because it was crippled by the king of Babylon, who, after the battle at Carchemish, Jeremiah 46:2, had taken from the river of Egypt unto the river Euphrates all that pertained to the king of Egypt. 2 Kings 24:7. Verse 21. I spoke unto thee in thy prosperity, but thou saidst, I will not hear. This hath been thy manner from thy youth, that thou obeyedst not my voice. When Jerusalem was prosperous in the days of David and Solomon, the Lord had appealed to the people to obey his covenant. God also warned, exhorted, reproved, and advised Jerusalem by his prophets, but she said, I will not hear. This was the language of her heart. From the time they came out of Egypt, it was their manner and custom to reject the word of God and turn a deaf ear to it. Verse 22 says that the vain hope that she had in her foreign alliances shall deceive them. 1. The wind shall eat up all thy pastors. As the parching east wind eats up the grass and withers vegetation, so shall the fire of war consume the men in authority and all sources of their help. Isaiah 47. There is a play on words in the Hebrew language. The English language has the sense but lacks the poetic force of the Hebrew language. It means as follows. A. The pastors whose office is to feed the sheep shall themselves be fed on. B. The pastors who drive the flock from place to place for pasture shall themselves be driven into exile by the Chaldeans or be killed in war. 2. Thy lovers shall go into captivity. Her allies, Egypt and Assyria, shall themselves be made captives by the Chaldeans and shall not be able to preserve themselves, much less to give any assistance to her. When Jerusalem shall see herself so shamefully disappointed by human help, she would feel ashamed because she had acted wickedly. Stripped of all her excellencies, she would be reduced to poverty and disgrace. This happened in 597 BC when Nebuchadrezzar deported many of the nobles, princes, and all the mighty men of valor, all the craftsmen and smiths. None remained except the poor. 2 Kings 24:14. Verse 23. O inhabitant of Lebanon, that makest thy nest in the cedars. Lebanon is known for its noble and stately mountains. Lebanon is a metaphor for splendor and is here used for Jerusalem, whose temple, palaces, and principal habitations were built of cedars of Lebanon. The inhabitants of Jerusalem dwelt in houses roofed with cedar. This cedar paneling of the people's houses demonstrated their trust in Lebanon since it came from there. Their homes were like little nests made of cedar. Ezekiel 13:10-15. In this sense, they dwelt in Lebanon because they lived in great plenty and delight as if they lived in Lebanon, thinking that the mountains of Lebanon were a refuge to them even though their homes were in Jerusalem. Yet, these comfortable surroundings would not be able to protect Jerusalem from the calamity that would come upon by the Chaldeans. The calamity would be as painful, sudden, and inevitable as the agony of childbirth. The prophet loved his native land and his people, and his heart was filled with pity as he delivered this tragic message regarding Judah's destruction. Coming exile of Coniah, also known as Jeconiah or Jehoiakim, verses 24-27. Verse 24. As I live, saith the Lord, though Coniah the son of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, were a signet upon my right hand, yet would I pluck thee thence. Jeconiah means Jehovah establishes. The Lord called Jeconiah as Coniah in scorn and contempt. Notice the figure of speech aphiaresis, which is the loss of one or more letters at the beginning of the word. Here, the first syllable Je is cut off, J for Jehovah. The cutting off of the divine name is meant to show the departure of Jehovah from Jeconiah and that he himself would be cut off. As I live, saith the Lord. This is God's most solemn formula of oath used to express the greater certainty of what is hereafter delivered. Swearing by his life is swearing by himself. Hebrews 6:13. Coniah was a signet upon the Lord's right hand. This signet was a badge of office. It was a ring with a personal insignia on it. Haggai 2:23. It was a symbol of kingly power. Genesis 41:42, Esther 3:10, Esther 8:2, which authenticated every edict. It was put in the hand most valued, that is, the right hand. Coniah thought his kingdom could never depart from him because he belonged to the line of David. I would pluck thee thence means to part from the royal authority. On account of his father's sins as well as the abominations that he did, 2 Chronicles 36:9, with great indignation the Lord says that Coniah will be removed from his throne and his kingdom and would be carried into a far country. He abused God's promise and therefore was justly deprived of the kingdom. He will not be able to secure himself from divine vengeance. After his 3 months and 10-day reign, young Coniah was carried away captive in Nebuchadnezzar's second campaign against Jerusalem in 597 BC, but lived on in captivity beyond his captor Nebuchadnezzar's death in 562 BC. 2 Kings 25:27-30. After a long time in captivity, by God's favor, in his 37th year, he was ultimately treated more kindly by evil Merodach, king of Babylon. Jeremiah 52:31-34. But none of his direct posterity ever came to the throne. Verse 25 says that no sooner was Coniah plucked off from God's hand, he fell into his enemies' hands. The Lord would give Coniah over to King Nebuchadnezzar. The transfer of a signet ring symbolized the transfer of authority. Now, Coniah will be deprived of his glory and his kingdom, and Babylon would control the affairs of Judah. God has given Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon and the Chaldeans the power and authority to destroy them in order to carry out his judgment. Verse 26. And I will cast thee out, and thy mother that bare thee, into another country, where ye were not born, and there shall ye die. Jeconiah's mother was Nehushta, the daughter of Elnathan of Jerusalem. 2 Kings 24:8. And in Jeremiah 29:2, she is named in Hebrew as the Gebirah, the great lady or queen mother. Since Jeconiah was only 18 years old when he became king, his mother helped him to execute the royal duties. She assumed the authority of a queen regent. She did not correct his evil doings in his youth, but encouraged him in it by her own example. She had thus been a partner with him in his sins also. And I will cast thee out of this palace, out of the city of Jerusalem, and out of the land of Judea, that is, to Babylon, where he shall die. Verse 27 says that though they were fond of returning to their native country, they shall not return. Their heart's desire will be to come back home. Thither shall they not return, for they were to die, as before predicted, in Babylon. The curse on the line of Coniah, verses 28 to 30. Verse 28. Is this man Coniah a despised broken idol? Is he a vessel wherein is no pleasure? Wherefore are they cast out, he and his seed, and are cast into a land which they know not? These expressions of astonishment are the exclamations of the people who idolized Jeconiah when they heard these solemn denunciation against their king and their country. The question implies an affirmative answer since their doom was inevitable. The idol of the people was now to become like a broken idol of no use to anyone. He and his seed. Though Jeconiah had no children in Jerusalem, he had 7, including Salathiel, mentioned in Matthew 1:12 in his captivity. Verse 29. O earth, 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 hear the word of the Lord. The solemnity of the mystic threefold repetition expresses the certainty of this prophecy, the divine decree. It is repeated 3 times by way of emphasis to engage a deeper attention and to add intensity. Because of the deafness of the people and unwillingness to hear and believe what God spoke unto them, the word earth is repeated, thereby calling the whole earth to witness and hear the judgment of God and his dreadful denunciation. Deuteronomy 30:19, Deuteronomy 32:1. This is a sorrowful calling of God, showing the seriousness of their transgressions. Verse 30. Thus saith the Lord, write ye this man childless, a man that shall not prosper in his days. For no man of his seed shall prosper, sitting upon the throne of David and ruling any more in Judah. The command, write ye this man childless, is apparently addressed to the scribes who kept the register of the royal genealogies, that is, the book of living. Ezekiel 13:9, Psalm 69:28-29. Without waiting for his death, they were asked to enter Coniah's name in that register. Though Jeconiah had 7 sons, 1 Chronicles 3:17, yet he is to be entered on the genealogical tables as one without children, for none of his posterity ever sat on the throne of David. Jehoiakim, that is Jeconiah, was the last of the house of David in the line of Solomon. His uncle Zedekiah indeed actually reigned after him, but perished with his sons long before Jeconiah's death. Zerubbabel, Jeconiah's grandson, 1 Chronicles 3:19, who is called the governor of Judah, Haggai 1:1, was a lineal descendant of Jeconiah. He returned to the land of Judah as one of the foremost leaders of the restoration community, Ezra 5:2. Yet he could not be said to sit upon the throne of David. Jeconiah's descendants were no more to be figured as kings, but to be reduced to the rank and obscurity of private persons. And yet, from so dead a trunk, from a family so utterly fallen, that spiritual king came forth, whose name is the Lord our righteousness. Jeremiah 23:5-6. Yes, it is the Messiah, Jesus Christ, an heir of David's throne. 1. Paternal ancestors. Jesus legally descended from Joseph through Jeconiah's line. The genealogy in Matthew 1:2-16 is given from Abraham to Solomon downward to Joseph. 2. Maternal ancestors. Jesus, through bloodline, descended from Mary through Nathan, brother of Solomon. The genealogy in Luke 3:23 to 38 begins with Jesus from Mary upwards to Solomon's brother Nathan, all the way back to Adam and God. God promised that no blood descendant of Jeconiah would reign over Israel. Does it not contradict the prophecy? No. Because Jesus was virgin born, the maternal line, hence not the natural son of Joseph, the paternal line, the pronouncement against Jehoiakim's line is not contradicted. The great accuracy and trustworthiness of the Bible is again demonstrated. Jeremiah chapter 22, questions and answers.